Hello.
Oh,
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Cult Bar. How are you doing, Renee?
I'm doing great.
Great.
Ready to talk about a relatively wholesome one this week.
Yeah. Not one with a lot of dire shit happening for a change of pace. So that's good, right?
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us what you're having to drink? You start us off with that.
I'm having a cocktail called The Imposter. And it's supposed to be all three kinds of rum, lime
Oh,
juice,
three
and
kinds.
yeah, and an apricot liqueur, but I couldn't find apricot liqueur. So it's actually an imposter because I used peach. But it's
Uh,
pretty good. So
yeah. That's all right. So how does it taste, though?
like I probably could have compensated a little bit for the peach with maybe some extra simple syrup because it's a little more bitter,
Hmm.
but pretty good.
Yeah, I was figuring that would be more sweet, but all right. Cool. I am doing something called a blue light special. Nice and blue.
There.
Um, as we will discuss, there's a reason for that because the person that did the documentary did a certain practice that he called blue light. So we'll see how this is. Very blue. That's good. Blue curacau's in it, or blue curacao. I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
I always say sow, so
Anyways,
either.
yeah. So anyway, this is vodka, curacao, lemon, pineapple juice, and simple syrup. So it's a lot of different sweet elements with a little bit of citrus going in there. So
Pineapple juice is a popular one. I've got like a lot of little cans of pineapple juice because of this show.
yeah, so that is pretty sweet, but not like cloyingly so. So
Hmm.
decent. I topped that monstrosity with a Luxardo cherry just to make it fancy. So have that. Those are always delicious. So, anyway, tonight we're going to be discussing Kumare, a documentary about a guy who wants to find out how if he can create a following from scratch. But before we get into that, how about excuse me, that cherry went down weird.
That's the danger of doing it live.
Yeah. So how about before that, we start with a little cult news.
So this week is actually kind of a flashback to it was our first episode, wasn't it? Sons of Our Mother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So as you know, we talked about it a little bit. Lori Vallow has been sentenced. Chad Daybell, I think, still has to go to trial, but maybe only sentencing. I don't know. But Cult Podcast, now that more information is available, is doing a series where we get Laurie's biography, Chad's biography. We get a deeper insight into what this group that they were running believes, and just a lot of stuff that wasn't in the documentary because at the time of the documentary, the focus was on the murders, the children being murdered. Um, I just finished episode 3 of the series. It's really great. I think there's going to be at least one more. There might be 2 more, and it's just been really interesting. It's there's like other relatives in Laurie's family that we didn't know about. There's more dead people.
More dead people.
Yeah.
Great.
So yeah, it's pretty good stuff. And you know they always research well and they keep it interesting and a little bit of sugar to help the medicine go down also. So can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, that's something that because the the documentary or whatever you want to call them, docu-series, I guess, didn't really go too heavy into their background because there was so much wild shit going on in real time, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. I don't know how you didn't tell me about this. So I'm holding you responsible for me not
I
knowing about
know. Well,
this.
I've been busy, Doug. I'm sorry.
No,
I'll
harm at
find a way
all.
to pay penance.
Yeah. So no harm, no foul. They're podcasts. I can catch up. So that's the good thing about them, right? So that's
Yeah.
cool. So we are going to talk a little bit tonight, like I said, about Kumare. What this is how it looks. It's this guy is a guy named is Vikram Gandhi. So I'm just going to give a quick thing about the essence of this, and then we'll start talking about him a bit.
Yeah.
So basically, he decides that because of his background, which we'll discuss in a minute, he wants to see if he can create a following from scratch, and decide to take the guru yoga kind of route. And it's just an exploration of how it happens, what goes on, and you know who who follows him and how he gets there. So
And some unintended consequences.
yeah, so why don't you start a bit with the background here, and then we'll start building off of that.
Yeah, well, real quick, this one is a lot. It's surprisingly wholesome.
Yes.
I had when I saw the previews for this like years ago, I thought it was going to be more like Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yeah, I had that thought too.
So I was
Yeah.
pleasantly surprised. But I will say there is some spiritual manipulation, and we're going to be talking a little bit about race because I think it's pertinent. So not really trigger warnings, but like I guess like just be aware. It's pretty wholesome, but obviously we wouldn't be covering it if it was straightforward.
Yeah, it's also about it was made in 2011, so it's 12 years old, which seems insane. But
I know. I said a few years ago, God, over a decade ago.
yeah,
So what I found really interesting, Doug, is again going into it. I hadn't seen the previews for it since it came out,
hmm
and so I was actually very surprised to see that he was almost like a seeker, right? So he's very skeptical, but he comes from a very, very religious Hindu background. He sees that his grandmother's getting something from it, but he doesn't understand why or what because he doesn't believe in it. He
hmm
actually goes to college and studies religion, thinking it would help him become more religious, but it had the opposite effect. I feel like that happens a lot, actually.
yeah. We could do a whole show on skepticism and how people come out of studying it and then deciding, oh yeah, that's not what I want.
Let's get all of the information. That'll help me have good faith and not question anything. Never a good plan. Um, so yeah, but then he went to India. He visited a lot of swamis and yogis and gurus. Um, he pointed out that even there's a lot of fakers because it's like a tourism industry in India for white people to go and find a guru and whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and he said he realized that the issue was not with the belief system but with the leaders. And I know you wanted to get into this a little bit. Oh, here's this secret kicker. This little tiny bit is going to talk about sexual abuse.
Yes. So
Sorry.
yeah, that's okay. That's okay. I'm glad you mentioned that because yeah, it is, and I didn't think about that with a trigger warning because this bit was kind of gross, well, a lot gross,
Yeah.
um, because when you're talking about gurus and you know spiritual leaders and things like that, there's a lot of abuse that happens, especially sexually. And so they're interviewing a few folks, and one of them was a guy named Bhagavan Das. I'm probably mispronouncing that.
Yeah.
Um, and he's kind of this like he's a white guy with a big long white beard and hanging out and just dressing like a yogi, and he's living the high life on that end because he one of his quotes, and I'm going to read it because I was listening to it. I was like,
I was
Jesus Christ.
I'm glad you wrote it down because it was
Yeah,
wild.
I actually paused it so because I use a lot of subtitles because I'm hard of hearing, but I'm glad I had the subtitles on so I could make sure I got it right. He said, "If I were a 20-year-old girl, I would love to hang out with me." He said, and then said, "People are saying he's having sex with all these young girls. He can't be a real guru. Why not? What could be more fabulous than having sex with a really spiritual, mystical person?" Ew,
Most
ew.
of them are not that blatant, right? Most of them are not because this has been a thing that's rocked a few meditation and yoga communities like in Southern California. You can kind of
Mhm.
Google it and you'll find all these news articles. And you'll find that the women who sleep with the men will say that. But the men themselves are usually, they're not saying the quiet part out loud. They're not admitting that they're using their status as a spiritual leader to manipulate women into sex. Um, and I find it kind of, to me, when a spiritual or religious leader is abusive, it's kind of a double hit because you wouldn't be there and trust that person if you didn't have faith in their belief system. And so it is the thing that they do that victimizes you, and then the way that it affects your spirituality and your your beliefs going forward. It's a
Mhm.
double thing. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then another one I wanted to mention, but this wasn't really about abuse. It was a guy named Amrit Desai, and because they were discussing how they talked to one of these gurus in India, and he was like, "There's a lot of people that aren't really gurus here that pretend to be like, and they don't really have the belief. They're just there." Like he was calling the other ones out. Now we don't know if that guy was the same way. We don't
Yeah.
because they didn't really explore that. But it was funny because they were exploring that idea, and this Amrit Desai was asked, "How do you figure out who's real?" And his response was, "Only the one who carries that power to transmit it non-verbally. That's how you know." And I just rolled my eye. I couldn't have rolled my eyes bigger at that moment than
Because, well, I think it's natural, right? You get a good vibe off somebody, you like being around them, you're more likely to trust them, but that does not mean that they're ascended, like that they have some extra knowledge that you don't have. But we see in this journey with Vikram that that's all you really need is that
yeah.
charisma.
How many times have we seen a charismatic leader rise when out of nothing because they're charismatic? I
Yeah.
could I could think of a former leader of this country that was like that, but but we'll save that for another day.
So one of the things I want to point out is he goes in with this idea that he's just going to see if he can do it, but he knows that if he's going to be able to do it, he has to find a message that he believes in.
Yeah,
And what he chooses is like, you're your own guru. And so there's this like deranged honesty in these interactions where he is telling people, I'm the fakest person I know. I mean, in his grandmother's Indian accent, because he's from New Jersey. Um, I'm the fakest person I know. You don't really know who I am. I'm not teaching you anything. And people eat it up, even though he is telling them exactly what he's doing. And I found that so wild.
it's the brilliance of it. Is just he's telling them, "I am not what you think I am, and you're the ones doing this." And they just were like you said, gobbling up. They were just looking for somebody to follow. Really,
Yeah, so I guess
uh,
I jumped ahead because we didn't explain what
yeah,
he did to prepare for this. So
yeah. So he goes over to India, and as you mentioned, he went over to India to find some mentors and spiritual guidance to try to figure out how to be a guru. One of the lines he says, "It felt like the gurus were trying to out guru each other,"
yeah, I thought that was
and that's where we were talking about the bit with the guy saying a lot of them aren't real. So, um, but he also realizes that there's something about being a quote unquote guru that makes people trust you. Like just having that title, there's an inherent trust with that word. Um, so he goes over there for a while, and we see him kind of wandering around and doing his thing there. Just it doesn't they don't really explore that too much about who he talked to or anything like that. Just that he was kind of over there, right? What? And I'm
yeah, and
not
I
missing
feel
that.
like no, you're right about how it was presented in the documentary, but I think it's one of those things. This is interesting because why I think this is such a great documentary for us to use. There's so many parallels to cults, right? So like
Yeah,
how that Jim Jones went and stayed at Father MJ Divine's compound and learned tactics from one cult to bring to his other cult, and like there's other examples of this, and it's just kind of wild. You're like, wait, like they know exactly what they're doing because they're going to like take class, right? And so I don't know that it was important what they said to him. It was important that he was getting the vibe on how to pull it off, right?
right. So he comes back to the U.S. after a while. I'm not sure how long that was, but it was a period of time. I think, what was it like? I think I'm guessing 6 months was kind of what it seemed like. I
Yeah,
could
and
be wrong.
he was like learning yoga during that time as well, so that he could
Yeah.
be convincing as a yogi.
And he was like, as far as yoga moves and being flexible and all that. But yeah, we'll get to that. Decides to come back, and then he starts figuring out, all right, how am I going to do this? And he decides on Phoenix, Arizona, because of its openness to gurus in Eastern religion.
Yeah, there's a lot of that there.
Yeah, so an interesting choice. I would have thought he would have chosen California, but California is not a
Smoke
monolith. It's not a monolith. There's a lot of people that aren't into that at all. So
right, like LA, right? Like
yeah,
you could do it in LA, but you'd have a lot of competition.
that's
You'd have
true.
a lot of like there's 100 yoga classes you could go to on any given day. And people don't leave their neighborhood in LA
Yeah, that's true.
either.
So he gets there. He takes two friends with him, Purba and Kristen, I believe her name is. Purva's like the person that books all the appointments,
And she's
like
Indian,
a
which I think is important to this, right? Is
but
that
doesn't have an Indian accent in real life. She just
no,
like she just uses that to give her some authenticity, I guess,
which
is
is
what she.
great because that's also what he does. He says he's impersonating his grandmother.
Yeah, yeah. And Kristen is kind of his sidekick during the yoga sessions, right? Um, so
Well,
part of this, go ahead, because I had
that
said,
first yoga class they do is great, right? Because they show them talking and it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna easily get like 50 people in there. It's gonna be such a great start. And then there's like two people that show up.
yeah, I think it was two or three. So yeah. But what was before we even got there, he was teaching Kristen these fake yoga moves and fake chants, like they were making them up. They weren't like part of any sort of other thing.
Right.
It was part of the shtick he wanted to use to kind of starting from scratch, I guess.
When you have to have something different, right? Or people are gonna go
I can
find
get this
something else.
anywhere. Yeah.
So he grows his beard out, he grows his hair out, he dresses like he's like the stereotypical image of, the guy sitting at the top of the mountain you have to climb in Tibet to get the answers. He really leans into it. He's got a staff with like
Yeah.
a
The staff was
Indian
ridiculous.
symbol. Yeah, I mean, he just really went all in on it. And this is where I say I think there's a little bit of racism here because nobody asked him any questions. Nobody said, "Where did are you a certified yoga teacher?" No, he just goes in and teaches a yoga class. He's not a teacher. There's a process for that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, Nobody asks like what his lineage is. Like gurus have gurus. Like
Mhm.
there's an actual line. Nobody asks him about that. They're just like, well, this guy is dressed this way and he looks the right way and he has the right accent, so he must be a guru.
Yeah, they play on that, and so it's like like we've talked. This is super interesting because it feels very much like how cults start.
Yeah,
Like just like he just has this idea, and all right, I'm just going to do this, and this is the character I'm going to play. But so they find a place to stay. He decides to move his bed outside to be like other gurus,
right.
which to do that in the middle of Phoenix, fuck that.
Like, they don't say what time of year it is, but yeah, hopefully he did it in the winter, so at least it wasn't like 112.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like India is notoriously warm all the time.
Right, but he's from New Jersey.
Yeah, but like you went to India for a while, so maybe he kind of got acclimated to it there and was just like, this is no big deal. But
No.
I I sweat when it's 80 degrees, and that would be a no for me. No
Yeah,
thanks.
no, I can't do it. I can't.
And you're outside in Arizona, which means lizards and all kinds of shit. Scorpions, yeah, no
Yeah,
thanks.
I didn't even think about that.
Scorpions are like, all right, people are scared of spiders. No, scorpions. Those things creep me the hell out. They freak me out so bad because they crawl like spiders and they have stingers that can kill you. So no thanks.
We have sun scorpions here, or wind scorpions, aka sun spiders. They're neither spiders nor scorpions, but they are terrifying. And they are like smaller and native to this area camel spiders. That's what they actually are. And they will occasionally get in the house. I've had a few, and I hate it. They're harmless. I don't believe
They don't look harmless.
that.
Uh, so how about let's talk a bit about like they make their own terminology, and he comes up with the name Kumare. I don't. Did they ever explain how he came up with that, or he just
No, they said it means divine child.
yeah? Which
And it's more of a title than a name, which I liked because again, this is it's so it's so textbook.
and not only that, then they're in a session, and she's reading. The one lady's reading from the Kumare Sutra.
I noticed that. So here's the thing. I think things changed fast because they had some things like that that were really funny, but they didn't focus on them. They were like little. So there's a part where he's teaching someone to meditate, and it's a picture of him and a picture of Osama bin Laden.
And Obama.
Yeah, but the Osama bin Laden thing, I think, really was like this guy isn't going to know that it's Osama bin Laden. He's going to think it's some mystical teacher. But it reminded me, I took a meditation class that skeeved me out. I'm not going to say what kind of meditation is because I don't know if this is representative of how they operate. But one of the things that we were told is that if you really you want to live the way that they live, right? This Eastern thing, you don't watch the news because it's going to bring negativity in and you're going to feel bad. I was like, well, yeah, it's easy to be happy all the time if you ignore everything.
Yeah, if you don't know what the fuck's going on, then yeah, it's easy to be happy.
So I feel like there's an element, and we see like all these different flavors of new age come in and out. But there's an element of people who are kind of in that new age space that maybe they wouldn't know what Osama bin Laden looks like if they, saw a picture out of context because they're focusing on their love and light.
Yeah, maybe. So Zach has a question.
Uh-oh.
Nothing, Zach. No, I'm just
The
kidding.
winning Powerball numbers, Zach. I'm sorry. Somebody
Yeah.
else got them.
Yeah, sorry, man. So you talked about they had the first class, right? And one of those people in the class was a lady named Toby. And Toby was fascinating.
She
You
was.
you want to talk about Toby?
Well, so she's a death penalty attorney.
Yep.
And it's easy to understand why she wants to take yoga classes and find ways to relax and find ways, to meditate and clear her head because that's a tough job. And she even talks about, the people that she works with. She doesn't think that they're good people. She doesn't think that they're innocent. She just doesn't believe in the death penalty. So she's dealing with some of what does she say? It's like it's murder and something else horrific. It's not ever just murder. And she's like very giving and very smart. And that's actually one of the things that Bikram says, right? It's like, but Toby was so smart. How was she just falling for it?
Yeah. Well, and she also was like, I think they asked her why, like he asked her, why are you doing this? Because nobody else will.
Right.
They're giving up on parts of society and they deserve a voice or something to that effect. So yeah.
And I think that's a good example because we talk about this a little bit in these other episodes we've done, but like people don't join cults when everything's going great, right? So Toby has this very high pressure, really mentally and emotionally exhausting job. And the promise of somebody who can just make you feel at peace and make you happy has got to be very tempting. And we meet other people who we see like, okay, this person's at a major change in their life, or this person's obviously been a seeker for years and years and years. And you get it's so every other episode we've ever done without like murder.
Yeah, or or sexual assault or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah. So, like I said, there are some issues with the manipulation. Like that's the icky part of this is like he knows, and he does know he's doing this. And we'll talk more about that later. But I mean, there's other people that are involved here too. Like Toby was just, I thought she was just a person with a genuine kind of heart who was really just trying to find a reprieve from what she was doing. Then the other guy that really fascinated me was Greg, because Greg had all kinds of problems before he kind of got sober. But oh boy,
His list was pretty long.
yeah, yeah, he was basically on injecting cocaine, like doing crack, and like just a mess. And
The time and the whole bit. Yeah.
yep. And his wife stayed with him despite and he very clearly talked about how he was a womanizer too. So clearly he wasn't faithful either. On top of all that,
Yeah, when he said part of what helped him get clean is he knew she was on her way out, and so he knew he had to do something. But he also like went to prison. There was a lot. There was more to his rock bottom than his wife being ready to leave. But
yep, yeah,
yeah, but he's been clean and like sober for years, right? Like it's not like yesterday. So we're not looking at somebody who's like fresh out of this being drawn in, which I think would be more this one, Zach. Well, you got to find like a Chinese medicine one or a meditation one that promises physical benefits or
yeah.
um, one one where you
Kumare would not have been right for you
yeah, no.
because he promised you nothing. So
um but yeah, so it was interesting because they said basically that he dedicated his life to doing good for others once he got clean.
yeah,
So he
yeah,
was interesting. And then you have the mom who,
Kimberly.
Kimberly, they're in her living room, and it's just like pictures of her kids everywhere. And she talks about her whole life revolved around her kids. She was so happy to be a mother. Their father was never involved. Now they're off at school, and it's weird because like her goal is to lose weight, which I like seem like a weird thing to meditate over. But but it's like she's dealing with being without, her children are grown and she's not needed anymore and she doesn't feel like comfortable in her body and these major life changes are happening whether she likes it or not. Bless you. So
Yeah,
I
it's
think
starting to make off there.
there's a lot. And then what was the girl who the blonde girl who ended up coming
Yeah,
again?
the young girl.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't mark down her name. I don't
I didn't
think.
either. I got the sense though that if he were less ethical, he could have. I mean, she was definitely one of the people who'd be very susceptible to sexual abuse, power imbalance in a less ethical situation.
Yeah, there was one thing she said that I did note, and I didn't write her name with it, which was nuts. Usually I do. Where she said, "I could tell he was special before I even met him," and that kind of new agey kind of stuff always just kind of like, okay, you have to meet someone, like be in their presence before you feel that sort of special tug. I think, like that special pull that they might have. I think
Yeah,
you can do it a little bit on screen, like through not, I'm going to use Zoom or whatever. It's way different when it's in person. So the
I'm
idea that the idea that
thankful.
you could do that before you meet them is fucking bullshit. Sorry.
but she was the first moment in the documentary where I got nervous because she's sitting with him talking about wanting to leave her husband and she wants his advice. And it's
Oh,
like,
that was Emily. Emily was dark haired.
oh, really?
But the blonde hair, the blonde like strawberry blonde girl was the one who said I knew he was special, but I couldn't
Oh,
remember
okay.
her name.
Sorry.
Emily is that one. Yes, yes, she was. That was the one that I was really worried about.
Yeah, and she's like wanting his advice and she's trying to Zach. Mm-mm. um, sorry. Oh, could I wanted to see how far he would go because I feel like if he had given her advice, the whole tone of this documentary would be different.
And he made very, very clear steps to not give her advice one way or the other.
Yeah.
And
And
to
she
his
answered it,
credit,
she got up and walked away.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, she was asking, "Should I stay?" Or like literally, like, "Should I stay?" Like, I don't think I should stay, and he just was kind of non-committal, which like you said, if he was more an unethical person, he could have told her one way or the other, and he
Right?
didn't.
And posing as a guru, if you wanted to easily convince people that you're the master of all these things, you would just give the advice, right? So that made me really nervous. I was really glad to see he didn't do it. Um, but I think the other thing he does, which is really interesting, and someone even says it, um, but he doesn't really say anything to anybody. Like
Yeah.
everything he says is empty or admitting, like, I'm not teaching you anything, I'm nobody. And people just fill in whatever they want to hear anyway. And it's very interesting to me because it's like it's like if you um like use tarot or something, and the answer you get is it's like it's just tapping into the answer you already have. It's not really telling you the future.
Hmm.
Or, going to therapy because the therapist won't tell you what to do either, or they'll lose their license. So by not telling someone what to do and not giving advice, they hear what they want to hear, but that means that's the answer that they just really wanted someone to tell them it was okay to do.
Yeah. 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 It's just it's an interesting thing to see that just how he kind of gently tiptoes around things like that. There's a few times this happens in the document. That's the most glaring one to me is Emily.
Yeah.
There's a few times where he kind of treads lightly, and he generally steers it towards like trying to lift them up and being like, "You can do this," or not like "You got this, man," or anything like that. But it's just very much kind of gently reassuring them that they're the ones in control. They can do the things.
Which I think part of why it ends up being kind of wholesome is because, yes, there's manipulation because he's lying to them and he's pretending to be someone he's not. I mean, kind of, right? It's a weird lie because he's being completely honest, but he's being completely honest knowing that people will read something else into what he's saying, right?
Yeah,
Um, so that manipulation is there, but he doesn't manipulate people to do things. He doesn't manipulate them to make certain choices or live a certain way.
uh,
Zach's just like our
I
side guest host.
eh, yeah, he's always good for comments. So yeah, it's good that he does it in this fashion. That's like I said, I think the young girl who was like a strawberry blonde, she was fairly smitten too, but not like Emily. Emily was very much, oh, this is what I need kind of deal. And yeah, that was a little harrowing, but I'm
I
glad.
think the blonde girl would have definitely slept with him if he were. I want to say like if he were the real thing, because sadly, like that's kind of
Yeah,
reality. But I think I got the vibe a little bit that what Emily wanted was for him to say, "Leave your husband," because then that meant,
she didn't have to make the choice.
well, that she didn't have to make the choice, but also that, oh, maybe there's a chance for me to be with Kumare.
Yeah. There's one line that was in the middle of all this that kind of got buried, and I don't know if you caught it, but it was just something, and I cannot remember who said the line after the fact. He asked one of the people. He said, "Do you see a Vikram?" Which is his first name, which I think is, and the person responded, "No, I see a Metatron," which is like a biblical reference.
Yes,
I was like,
yeah,
"What?"
the past lives thing.
Yeah, I was
She
like,
started to
"Wow."
Kumare is going all the way back and, very like I will say this, the manipulation on the followers is uncomfortable. The manipulation on other new age grifters is beautiful. That
Very much so.
lady was probably so excited to see herself on that documentary right up until
Yeah,
she
and then to
realized
realize,
what was up.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, speaking of new age grifters, I think we got to start talking about Daryl, the
Yeah.
the
Oh my god.
the acoustic theologist, which
This was
is I've never heard that term in my life. I will let you take this one because holy shit, I might not be able to get through it with a straight face.
I'm trying to see where my notes are on this because I know I took notes.
Oh, I took notes because that
Oh,
one was like, I think I stopped the thing like 5 times trying to take notes for what was going on there.
oh, I guess I didn't actually take notes, which is
Okay, well,
but I remember oh, here it is. Okay. I've had sound baths, right? Like
I mean, that's right.
I live in a place that he could pull this off. Um, and so there's like several places that do it, and you go and you like lay on a mat on the floor, and they play gentle music, and they play instruments that sound like rain, and like
Wind.
wind, and like oh, there's a bird flying over you, and it's basically like you just get to take a nap. It's really like it's just nice. You don't have to believe in anything. You just go and you have a nice time. But this guy is like banging pots and pans and like just it's so obnoxious. Every sound is bad. It's like, what is this meant to accomplish? And
And
then
he plays a didgeridoo right on top of him, like he lays it
he's in
right
his
on top of
face,
his chest, like whirl, 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 whirl. I'm like,
and then
Jesus.
he takes like a floor polisher and rubs it on it.
The buffer about killed me. I was like, what? How did? And this is the second time I've seen it. I saw it like 8 or 9 years ago. I totally forgot about the buffer. I was like,
So unprepared for him to get buffed.
yeah. And he was like doing it all, and the guy like Bikram was like just going with it too. He
Oh
was
yeah,
all
he's
he
like,
was just
I mean, he went. I'm sure he's
he
having
was like,
fun.
oh
And there,
my God.
there's like just shouting and noise and power tools, and it's just like, oh man, if I paid for a sound bath and got that, I would be writing a Yelp review. Oh my god.
If you want a nice shiny chest, come here. Because holy
I
shit,
wonder
that
if
was
it's like
just
a good exfoliation.
oh, maybe. As long as
Yeah.
he doesn't make sure he doesn't put any sandpaper on that thing. That would be bad.
What was the fluffy one?
Yeah. That like it just
There's
when he
so much
started he probably he's like
on him.
I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And I stopped it and Jill was reading and because she'd seen it before and I stopped it and I'm just laughing and she looks up, she goes, I forgot about the buffer.
I just wasn't prepared at all. Like he's being polished. What is happening? Because you start
Oh
with
my
him
God.
playing a didgeridoo in his face, and it only gets louder in a bad way from there. Not like a wall of sound like what's his name? The music producer who killed a bunch of people. Not like that. Phil
Oh,
Spector.
oh,
Yeah.
Phil
Not
Spector, yeah.
Phil Spector's wall of sound, like it sounds great because it's loud.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like if you live next door to this guy, you'd be making noise complaints every single day.
Yeah. Well, and this is at that point, then they do this thing where they go and they have other people, right? He brings in other people who are part of this like sound collective, I guess. And they're all doing they're playing instruments and blah, 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 blah. And then there was this one guy and he was talking about how he studied all these different things. And that was the guy Kumare went over to his house. And that's where he did the weird uh, Obama Kumare and Osama bin Laden photos.
So here's the thing I thought was really interesting about that because I think people sitting at home got the group, not the Osama bin Laden thing. I just think that's funny. Um, but there's a guy in that group who says the prophecy I received when I was 17 in the Mormon church was right.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
Right? And I think to average person sitting at home, that sounds insane. Here's a fun fact about Mormons.
Dun, dun, dun.
When you're like 17, 18, you go get what's known as a patriarchal blessing, and they like pray over you, and then you get this piece of paper that's supposed to tell your future. And it usually says things like that. I mean, they're pretty standard. Every once in a while, people will get like a really crazy one because the guy just had fun with it, but they're pretty standard. And the men are always going to be spiritual leaders, and they're always going to be, so familiar with the scripture and a great leader to their family. And the women are always going to be wonderful mothers and, never sway in their belief in the church. But yeah, you literally get a prophecy, a personalized prophecy. So that guy was, what he was saying was probably true, even though it sounded crazy.
It's true to him, apparently.
I mean, it really happened, right? Whether or
Yeah.
not you believe the prophecy, which, like I say, like they're pretty standard. Like in the ex-Mormon Reddit, people will share theirs and they're like identical. But it's a thing that really happened, more than likely. So
Pretty ballsy of the Mormons to say that your future is a prophecy. Like, sorry.
yeah, it's wild. I mean, they don't really call it a prophecy, but that's what it is. And
Hmm.
Mormons believe in prophecy, so it's a whole thing. But yeah, I thought it was interesting because I'm like, that guy sounds like crazy, but
Oh,
he's
he sounded loon.
talking
He
about
sounded like a
something
loon to
that
me.
happened. Yeah, it's just something that actually happened to him as a regular part of being a Mormon. Like,
Wow.
yeah.
I am really looking forward to when we really delve into just the Mormon church with
Oh,
you, because oh my god, that's gonna be a long episode.
we're gonna have to do several. There's no one episode about it.
Yeah.
Um,
One other thing that the fact that he drew a dick on the guy's forehead at that ceremony with the Obama, and sure,
again, like I said, I think in the beginning he didn't think that he was going to respect any of the people that he worked with.
or he was kind of trying to see how far he could push it.
Right. Yeah. Because it was just like, I don't know. There was a lot of funny stuff in the beginning, and there wasn't any funny stuff like from the middle onward. And I think that's where he started to maybe get to this place where he was like, oh shit. Um,
People are actually listening to me.
yeah, they're actually listening to me and they're actually good people and they're not stupid. What do I do? And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. Sorry, that buffer thing's still in my.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. You know what I would say also in the group of followers, because I was saying that Kumare says a lot of things without saying anything, right?
Mhm.
So do these people. There's the guy who says he was so, by you giving me this blessing of being in this thing, in this sound bath, and they don't call it a sound bath, whatever, um, gave me another blessing. And he says, um, I was enthralled by the sound of sound rather than the silence of sound.
That sounded like somebody who was either high as fuck or drunk as fuck would say.
But also, I
I
think just like trying so hard to make it a spiritual experience,
or
right?
profound. Yeah, like
Yeah.
something really
And
profound.
then a certain tree bears certain fruit was another thing that they said in that group. And it's like, well, yeah, that's how
Yeah,
trees work. Like
duh.
trees grow apples, peach trees grow peaches. Yeah, we know.
So much fun. Um, yeah, like I think you agree with you with the idea. Like I think at the beginning he was really just trying. He wasn't sure he would respect these people who thought it'd be a fun, interesting experiment.
Right.
And as he got a little bit deeper into it and realized people were actually like, first of all, he started sharing very personal shit with him like immediately.
Immediately, yeah.
Like they just opened up to him. And again, this plays into the I'm a guru. I look the part. It's something inspires some trust there without actually knowing that person. So
And I
yeah.
sound the part because I'm going to say that that guy you talked about at the top, the white guy, it
Hmm.
probably took him a while.
Yeah.
Whereas Vikram grows his hair, grows his beard, starts talking with an accent, and people are like, he knows everything.
Hmm. He's so wise.
Yeah, it's like very noble, savage, weird, uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
I'm
Go
gonna go
ahead.
back to
You
Greg
next.
though, because when you say like people are just talking to him, they're just telling him things. Wasn't it Greg and his wife where he started, look how he's eating. Look how he's eating. That's how you're supposed to eat. And then he and his wife start eating the same way. Was that
Yeah.
Greg and
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
wife?
Yeah.
That was so wild to me. He was just like picking up food and putting it in his mouth.
Yeah, he wasn't doing anything. Oh, he wasn't using utensils. He was just kind of I think that's what it was. And they were like, "Oh, I don't even need to use like," and it wasn't
Yeah,
like he
that's
was
how you're
eating like a
supposed
he
to eat
was
food.
yeah, he wasn't eating like a bowl of beans with his bare hands. It was just like
Fruit and yeah, like and then fruit and finger food. It was finger food. And I feel he was doing it kind of in an affected way, like, because he was like very like,
Hmm.
and the reason why I feel he's doing it in an affected way is because when they started doing it exactly like him, it was so obvious they were doing it exactly like him. And it was just mind boggling. They read like profundity into the way he eats and then immediately started doing it themselves because they're going to get something out of eating this.
Nothing,
Zach, eat
Zach.
all the hand beans you want.
Mhm. If you're British, you can eat them on toast. Yeah, Greg, and that point, that's where Greg's also talks about is like recovery, and that's where we kind of learn all the stuff you mentioned earlier about all the shit he was doing, and it's he said he's just kind of bearing his soul to this person he barely knows. I mean, that's kind of just fascinating in its own right, like just
Yeah.
how like he's just like, hey, you look like someone I could trust. I'm going to tell you all the awful shit I did, and here we are.
I think he also like with the people who end up coming to the house, which I don't think they lived there during
The,
this
pe-
time.
the
They came and went.
Yeah, they didn't stay with him. It wasn't one of those kind of deals. They just came and
Yeah.
visited him at his place.
But he was doing like classes and stuff. But yeah, like he got to know each of those people on a personal level. He went to their homes, he talked to them. And I think that's where it gets weird for him
Mhm.
because now he is invested in the outcome. Whereas I think going into it, he wasn't invested in the outcome. He just wanted to see what would happen. Then it's like, oh no, like these are real people. They have real goals that are actually important to them. And like their emotional and spiritual well being just came into this.
Mhm.
Now, he obviously could have just stopped. At that point, he could have said, this is like over the line, whatever. He could have even not even told them the truth. He could have been like, well, I'm going out of town. My visit here is done. But he chose to keep going. And that's where I think it gets into this murky area where he's not doing anything like tangibly bad, but he is lying to their faces.
Yeah, but he does go away because at this point after that, we learn that he goes to this farm for this festival kind of thing. Be aware or something like that.
Yeah, but that was part of the experiment, right? He wanted to see if after getting these people into him, if he left and came back, if they would still be as enthralled.
Yeah, but this goes into a side story here where he goes
Yeah.
because he goes to this place called Avalon. No, wait, he goes to this place at this farm festival. First of all, before we even get to the bigger scope of what that festival is, he meets two women there, and they say they're from different planets in the universe Avalon,
Forgot about this.
and they're spirit lovers. And I was like, how many mushrooms are passed out there? Because Jesus Christ. But like,
It's very Unarius.
yeah. Well, you're going to go forward because then we find out that this thing is is run by two people who call themselves Urantia.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, is that Like I had to look it up and make sure that that wasn't the
No,
same
they were
thing.
not. They were not Unarians, but there was a heavy Unarian feel.
Hmm. Yep.
And weirdly, all of them were from different planets. Like nobody was from the same planet.
Yeah.
At a certain point, don't you just get tired of making up planets?
Yeah.
There were a lot of people there.
There was a lot of people there. It's interesting because one of the things that they talked about, the people that were running it was a guy named Gabriel and a lady named Nian. And that place, Urantia, where they all live and all the people live, and it's like a commune, was investigated by NBC, Dateline.
Really?
Yeah, that was part of the documentary. And the investigation, I guess there were claims that Gabriel and Neon and Urantia had forced people to give up their identities and belongings
Oh,
to their
that's
quote
right.
unquote cosmic family.
And they were
Um,
like, no, we do it because we want to, which is what everyone in a cult says.
yeah, and the the thing that I find interesting is, well, first of all, the Urantia piece says that they're just there to run a rehabilitation program for socially disappointed people. What a line.
I
What a
love it
line. What a
because
line.
apparently it's for me.
For a lot of people. That's the thing.
I know.
If that's the criteria, I think a lot of us could go there, right? But Gabriel then insisted he was only there to get to like strengthen their connection to God, even though he was the only person that could speak to God. But regardless, what Kumare, Vikram said was, as he left, he said, I just saw a lot of people trying to live their lives and share resources. So he didn't see the stuff.
But he also said, but maybe that's part of what's happening here is that they're trying to show the new people that are coming to visit how great it is.
Yeah.
And that's important because that really happens. And that's another thing, Steve Hassan, who we've talked about before, who created the bite model for cults. That's one of the things he talks about is because they get you in, and for the first several days, it's really great. And then it starts to turn, but you're already invested and you already have
Yeah.
good feelings. And so I think that was an interesting, I'm glad that he said that.
Yeah. So he does come back after that, right? So at that point, the people are still there following him. So that part of his experiment was successful. So ta-da!
And he starts telling them there's going to be an unveiling, and after the unveiling, everything is going to change. And they're supposed to be unveiling as well.
Which is
And
an interesting way to do it. But yeah, keep going. Sorry.
I think, I mean, I thought it was weird, but it makes sense in the context, right? Because if it were the unveiling and I'm going to do something that changes everything for you, it would not fit what he was doing with them.
Right.
Because again, he knew that he had to teach something he believed in. And so he was teaching them that they didn't need a spiritual leader. Here's what I want to get into. I think part of the reason it worked so well when he says, I'm the fakest person I know, I'm not who you think I am, I don't have the answers. I think we live in a world where almost everybody with any level of success has imposter syndrome to one degree or another.
Even those of us that don't have a lot of success have imposter syndromes.
Also that. And I think people saw, he says he's holding up a mirror. And I think they got that, man. Like they got like this is the mirror. He feels like I feel, or he understands how I feel. And they really like connected with this idea without realizing that he was telling them the actual literal truth.
Yeah, the amount of times he goes out of his way to say something like the one thing he says is something like he's in disguise. He says that one time, and I mean he's telling them, and he uses the word illusion a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like in a lot of times, like one of the lines he said that I wrote down was the illusion is that this place is somehow better than outside.
Oh
Meaning
yeah,
like
yoga place.
I,
He said that. Yeah.
I was like, wow. And actually that's a pretty profound statement in and on itself, but he's using it as a vehicle to tell these people, hey, I'm an illusion. And he does this repeatedly
Yep.
over and over again, telling them that he is not who they think they are, and they just ignore it.
And I think that that is, well, one, I mean, it's a statement on the charisma he brought to the thing. And it's
Mhm.
a statement on how certain groups of people look eastward and think that that's where all of the answers are. But I also think it's just a statement on like, people are looking for something to connect with. People are looking for, you know, everybody wants the answer, right? Like therapy, you go in, you don't get an answer. You get taught how to come to an answer. And you go to like a new age grifter or a guru and they say, I have the answer. And so if you're assuming this person has the answer and they're saying things to you, you're like, yeah, that's the answer without really thinking, what does it mean? Like they're looking for the profundity, like the silence of sound guy, because they need it to be profound, because they need it to be the answer.
Yeah. Like when he was talking about the in disguise, I remember he was actually telling him his real life story,
Yes.
leaving out the part of Jersey and all, but he was telling him about a guy named Vikram and all this
He
stuff.
did
And
say
like,
he was from New Jersey.
oh, he did. That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. He did. Vikram was from New Jersey. It is fascinating that he is just telling him, "Hi, this is me. This is my story." Now he doesn't say this is me. He just tells the story, but then he proceeds to say that he's in disguise. It's just,
I thought he did say, "Oh, and that man is me," but
oh,
they
he did.
yeah, they took it like
Oh, he's every man. Like
yeah,
that's kind of like they're willing to just, he's telling you this is what he is, not directly, sort of indirectly, but it leaves your brain a lot of opportunity to kind of tell its own story to make things fit
yes.
for you, right? Again, that's the brilliance of this whole thing, is watching him just repeatedly tell the people the truth and them not accepting it.
Yeah, like, oh, he says, "I'm an empty vessel."
Oh, that is a
That he
religious.
says that in the narration, not as Kumare, and I feel like that's why it worked.
There's also the part where he actually really enjoys being Kumare. He says at one point, like, Kumare just gets to be happy all the time. That's my job as Kumare. I don't have to deal with all the shit that life really throws at you. I just get to be Kumare. I get to be this. This is great. Like, he was enjoying it because of the fact that it ignored all the plights of real life because he just got to be this character.
But I
I,
also think as time went on, and he says a few things, he didn't say it plainly, but he says a few things that lead me to believe this. Um, and he says it at the end, I guess. But like at no point in any of his story does he say he has given up on religion.
no, he was actually, he's been actively the whole time trying to seek it out.
Right. And so he's saying this is the ideal version of myself. And I hope that that's not 100% true. But I think what he's saying is like somebody who is comfortable in their spirituality and feels at peace and feels happy, because a lot of meditation types or whatever sects tell you if you do it, you're going to be happy all the time. And actually, I think I told you, he remind me of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who's the founder of transcendental meditation and went on tour with the Beatles. And, he was a big deal. He was known as the giggling guru
Guru.
because he would just laugh. He was in bliss all the time. And he promises that if you do transcendental meditation, then eventually you will be in bliss all the time too. And Kumare does that stuff. He laughs a lot. He makes this like
Goofy
face where he wants
faces
to
and
laugh. And he acts very fascinated with everything, like childlike wonder, even things that he will tell the person that he's aware of or he knows. He will still have a sense of wonderment about it. And I
mhm.
feel like there's an element of that also that makes being Kumare nice. Like, what if I were a person who's just this secure and this happy?
Yeah, and there's, like you said, he's not trying, like, he's not saying I don't believe. He kind of wants to believe in his own way, to borrow your phrase behind you there on the little thing. But there's, like, he does the thing, and part of the reason I did this shrink is one of his core things of his
Right.
classes and teachings is he calls it a blue light meditation. It's just something he made up. He just thought it sounded cool. So he does this, and there's a part where he actually says, "For the first time, I saw the blue light,"
Yes.
where he kind of feels kind of sort of at one with whatever this
So
is going on.
Qigong uses this, like visualizing a light. It's not blue. I don't know if it even has a specific color actually, but Qigong meditation is
Mhm.
picturing a light and you hold your hands and you're supposed to be able to feel it. And so like, and I'm sure other meditations do as well, but I know that Qigong does. So I feel like he pulled some things in, but the way that he was doing it was different. But that is a real thing that a lot of spiritualities use.
Mhm.
Um, but then I feel like he almost can never help himself, because then when it's like giving the blue light to each other, it's very goofy. They're like,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. But that was part of the initial kind of make it goofy and see if people follow thing. I think it just, once it started, he just couldn't really kind of figure out how to make that different.
Right, but the thing too is that the lady says, I wanna learn that, I wanna teach it,
Yeah, in her own class.
and he says, "If it turned out that" I didn't write it down the exact quote, but it was like, basically, "It turns out that I'm full of shit, or it turns out that I do something and you can't agree with me anymore, would you still use the meditation?" And she was, "Yeah, I think I would." And he's like, "Okay, then you should use the meditation." I thought that was, again, like this place where he's always trying to kind of get in front of tangible damage.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was because that lady's name is Tish, and she wanted to do a concert in his honor.
That was funny. Yeah.
That was funny. That was super funny. And clearly he was uncomfortable with the idea of doing that because, but they had like people singing and playing music and like all kinds of stuff. Uh,
Did you notice that like half the people just didn't look like they wanted to be there?
Probably.
I
They're
feel
probably like,
like they showed these guys like standing up against the wall, like very, but I think there's like these elements of spirituality and like cultural things that people go to because they think they're supposed to like it.
mhm.
Like, don't go to a poetry reading if you don't like poetry readings. No, you don't. You're not supposed to like it.
Yeah.
Like, you just like it. And I felt like there was some of that going on in that concert where people were just kind of there because they thought they were supposed to be.
Yeah, I think you're right. I didn't really notice it as much because I was trying to pay attention to how he was acting and interacting with what was going on around him. But he does talk at that, and yet again, he says, "I'm not important, and this is not all that." Like he just again, it's just kind of I'm coming back to that all the time because he just never stops doing that.
Yeah. But I guess, so I don't know if we can, I don't know that there's any way to drag this out for 2 hours really because
Yeah, because
nothing really bad happens. So I think we can what does Jimmy Fallon do, Zach?
yeah, I'm a little lost. What do you mean by that? Like, does he tell people he's not important?
I mean, maybe he is self-deprecating.
Yeah, but that's an act. But
Um, so he kind of
but
knows that he's gotta tell them.
yeah.
He
Well,
makes
before there's some people we have to discuss that come into this picture because holy shit, the law of attraction people.
Oh, I
Come,
forgot about that.
oh my god, like what the fuck was that? Who are those people? Like Jesus
The
Christ,
secret. You wanna
it's
hear
just
something crazy? The
it's
Kabam people, I swear.
the,
Anyway,
and that was their acronym, Kabam.
and the can I he says, I'm not gonna try and do the accent because. But, Kumare says, "Can we or can I join you in the mantra of Kabam?" Um,
Oh, it was great.
Here's a sidetrack for you, though. Law of Attraction is The Secret, that book that
Yeah.
went wild for a while, and it started as a documentary. One of the guys in the documentary, who's also quoted in the book, is I can't remember his name. He's a guru. He's a white guy
Of
who
course he is.
did these spiritual retreats in Sedona, Arizona. Um, and several people died in his sweat lodges, and one person committed suicide in one of his things. And not only did the person commit suicide, but they didn't know that the person didn't come back with the rest of the group. So that's the law of attraction. That's one of the
We
major players in the law of attraction. There is a podcast series on that guy. I think it's called Guru by Wondery. It's really good, but it's harrowing. It's
Mhm.
terrible. The people who died horrific deaths. So all of these kind of weird new age grifts are coming in, but wherever there is a new age grift, there is somebody who's taking it to an extreme that is actually really damaging.
Yeah. We have an answer for the Jimmy Fallon thing. Yeah, he's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We were farther along. I didn't see the comment in time, so sorry about that, Zach. But thank you for explaining that bit. Um, yeah, the Kabam thing is fucking nuts. The lady, I don't know what to make of her. She seems like kind of just this hot mess. I don't know, like she had this vision to go to Africa, and she went to Africa, and there she met her husband, which is wonderful. That's nice. finding love elsewhere is cool.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know. So the whole thing about law of attraction is, you know, you envision having it, you envision doing it, and it happens.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Now,
But they,
obviously, that's not true because actually, scientifically, this is really interesting. There was a study a while back, and I'll have to look it up because this was years ago I read it, but there was a study that showed that people who do that, like visualization, this is what it's going to be like when I get that promotion, or this is what it's going to be like when I buy that car, or whatever it is, actually are less likely to do it because when you were envisioning it, your brain gives you the same reward signals that it would if it were happening.
hmm.
And so your drive to do it is tamped because your brain is like, oh, that was nice. We did it.
Hooray. No, you didn't really do I just, for some reason, that it's a lady specifically.
It's very,
She was
yeah.
out there, and she also, like, in the middle, confessed that, like, she lost her job and her husband can't work because he's not a United States resident yet. And she just like, I'm gonna go and I'm just put my trust in Kumar. And I was like, those kind of people worry
Right.
me.
But also, obviously the law of attraction isn't working for you.
But she's all in. That's the thing.
Well, here's the thing, she's all in on that, but then she's all in on Kumari too. And I think it's another situation where it's somebody who's in a bad situation, who's just looking for any life raft, right? And
Yep.
maybe it's the law of attraction, maybe it's this Indian guy, maybe it's something I haven't found yet. Um, but in the meantime, you need to be actually, instead of thinking about how nice it'll be to have a job, like you need to get a job, you have bills to pay.
Yep. So yeah, it just, that was kind of a side note, but just that was just kind of such a weird little set of people to throw into this mix.
He goes into a crystal shop and he kind of plays some circular logic games with the crystal shop guy. I mean, you think of a flavor of new age and there's a hint of it in here, if not a whole section on it,
Yeah,
which I thought was actually very deft to get that in when we're
for
talking about
sure.
yoga culture and guru culture, because the reality is that the average white American who's into one of those things is into several of those things to varying levels of ignorance.
Yeah. Or like, all right. So if you say, for instance, some people are really into crystals, that's a good one. And it's like some people are like, well, the vibrations do this, and then or this makes me feel, and you should do this with these different things. And here's the thing: if it makes you feel good and it doesn't harm you or anybody else, fucking do it. Who gives a shit? I
Yeah,
don't care.
and I
But
think the crystal shop guy kind of said that, right? Where he was
yeah,
like, "Well," because Kamari says, "Well, is the crystal doing that, or is it you doing that?" And he says, "Well, it depends on how you look at it." And he's like, "So the symbols are tools too." And then the guy's just like, "Oh, I can't. Like I'm never gonna make another sale again if I answer that." Like,
yeah,
but it's interesting because I think like a lot of people I know who are into that in a like spiritual or ritualistic way would
mhm,
say that it's just something to focus their energy, focus their thinking. It's not, they don't really believe that if they get the right rock and put it in their bedroom, that like that rock is going to make something happen.
mhm,
Now, I have a huge collection of crystals because they're pretty.
yeah. And we have a bunch in our house too because they're pretty and they're cool looking. So
I always tell myself when I get a ring, because I collect rings, I'll say like, oh, this one is supposed to mean like self love or whatever. And I'm going to think about that every time I wear this ring. And then like 2 weeks later, I'm like, I don't know what rock it is. I don't know what it means. It didn't work, but it's very pretty.
but it makes you feel good in a way that doesn't affect anybody else. So it's
Right.
kind of cool. So those kind of things I'm like, hey, if that that floats your boat, awesome. Do that stuff. Uh, but like I said, the law of attraction just kind of threw me off because that lady was just kind of out there in a way, in a place that I was like, oh boy, I didn't see that coming into the picture there. So, um,
Another thing about them, though, because I wrote this down, is we don't have to worry about the science part, is what the person leading it says. But then they say that it is scientific. And I thought, like, how circular is that? And everybody just sat there and was fine with it.
Like you said, some people are looking for answers in weird places, and maybe that does it for them.
If it would be nice, I think, to believe that wanting something bad enough meant that you would have it.
Yeah.
That would be very comforting.
Yeah, I could see how that would be comforting. Too much of a pragmatist to believe that, but maybe that takes the joy out of life in some ways. But
You like watching cooking competition shows,
I love watching
right?
cooking
And they're always
competition.
like, and I also really love Drag Race. And the thing that they have in common is that the competitors will be like, "But I want to be here more than anyone." It's like, that doesn't make you better at it. That
Nope.
doesn't mean anything in the context of this. People really think that it matters that they want something more than other people want it. And so I see, like, that's the inroad to law of attraction, right? Where, like, just wanting it really bad means you'll have it. And you see this in people. I just really want it.
It's also a huge thing in sports.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
like sports is Michael Jordan is widely considered the greatest player that ever walked the planet Earth. And they just said he would just wanted it more than anybody. Yeah, Jordan was a phenomenal athlete and terrific basketball talent.
And he worked his ass
He
off.
worked his ass. He was not just, man, I'm super talented and I got this. He just he outworked people on top of being super talented. Like, you can't just want something. Like, now listen, you can overcome a lot just by outworking people, especially in sports.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's a corollary that happens in sports all the time, and it kind of drives me
I
nuts
feel
because yeah,
I feel like it started by meaning, yes, Zach, and we could do a whole episode on why the whole manifestation movement is actually super racist and classist, but not tonight.
not
Um,
tonight.
I almost wore. I have a T-shirt that says "Fuck your love and light." I almost wore it tonight, but I was like, um. Oh, but I think when people started saying, like, you wanted it more than anyone else, what they meant was they wanted it bad enough to work harder than everybody else. But somewhere along the line, the working hard part got dropped, and you just hear people say, "You wanted it more than anybody," or "I wanted it more than anybody." I
Yeah,
want
no,
a lot of things I don't have. Let me tell you.
yep, and no, we don't got time, Zach, because some of us have to get up tomorrow morning. Now, you're on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. It's already
You don't
10:14
have
here.
time because this is going to hit soon. I
Yeah,
drank the whole thing.
yeah, I'm actually that's what I have left, and I had a full shaker. So,
Because I put
um,
lipstick on for the show, and then I have to use a straw, and I can't. I'm compulsive with the straw.
is it that way with like water?
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
very well hydrated, but
yeah. All right. So let's jump back into here a little bit because we're getting towards the end of this movie. It's this
right.
documentary. It's movie length. It was like an hour and a half.
Mhm.
Um, again, as we're getting close to the end, we're seeing just how much Vikram is really struggling with the idea that he's going to have to tell these people that he's a fake.
Yeah, and I thought, they actually bring everybody in for the unveiling, and the two women that work with him are doing the Kumare chant because he has his own special chant.
Kumare,
Yeah,
Kumare.
and kind of pumping them up. But what we see is he's inside and he's trying to figure out what to say. He's like reading something he wrote, then he's like saying something else, and then you see him just like, he started out in a really over the top outfit, and he actually like discards some of that. He like locks himself in the bathroom for a while. At one point, he says, I lied to you because I think you're all a bunch of idiots, which is not what he thinks.
Yeah,
But he's saying it like almost like, no matter what I say, this is what they're going to hear.
yeah.
And then he goes out. He doesn't fucking do it.
He says, "I can't do the unveiling." He's like,
I
"I just
couldn't believe
can't."
it. I couldn't believe it.
No,
I
I
was
knew it
so
because the first time I saw it, I was like, "Whoa!" Like, yeah,
I couldn't believe it. And I will say this, I think that the eventual unveiling I think it would have went better if he did it there. If he did it,
Probably.
because everybody in that room knew that that's what was supposed to happen once it happened, right? Like,
Yeah, the great unveiling was supposed to be the great unveiling, and then things would change, but it didn't. So yeah, I think you're right. And plus, after that, it's very clear he goes and he takes very personal trips to people's places to talk with them and hang
there's
with them.
phone calls where he goes back into character so he can
And it's pretty
provide that
clear.
support. Yeah,
It's pretty clear he cares about the people that are involved. Like he doesn't want to hurt them. He wants to make sure that they're not hurt by what he initially went into as not a farce. It was a documentary. It was what he wanted to
right.
do. But
An
like,
experiment.
yeah,
It's like the rom-com where, the guy is paid to go out on the date with the girl, but then he falls for her, but he knows if he says how it really started that she'll dump him. Like, it's
yeah,
almost like that. And I think, I was moved by his struggle the day he was supposed to do it. And then he didn't do it. And I was just like, oh, this is bad.
yeah,
Um, but that did allow the documentary to show us that whatever he did for these people, it worked. These people were reaching their goals. They were doing the things they said they were going to do.
mhm,
And I thought, like, that probably made it even harder, right?
yeah, yeah.
Because it's
I
like right now, everybody is better than they were when we went into this. But when I come clean, they're all going to be hurt.
Yeah, and what if they don't continue the path that they were on? Yeah, he was
Yeah.
really, really struggling.
Sorry, excuse me. But I think that's a major concern as well, right? If the reason you're doing something is because someone you trusted said it would work, and then you find out that you cannot trust that person, it's like, well, should I be doing it then? Um, but again, in his defense, or in his, maybe not even defense, but like in his redemption, he never told them to do what he thought they should do. He always told them to do what they thought they should do.
Yeah, and he always pushed back, "You are the gurus. I'm not the guru." Like, he said that a lot of times, and he said it enough that, when we get to the end, we'll kind of figure out where this is going. But, he said, like, one of the things he said to them as a group was like, which I thought was a great line, "You are all great beings, and you must stop pretending you are not."
Yes.
And that was just him self-empowering them, and that was such a good building line to just kinda, yeah, "Hey, you guys have the tools. You have the power to do these things. You can do them yourself. You are the power, not me." I just again, I think as he got closer to the end, he realized, "I really gotta push this point."
Yeah. Well, and I think in addition to
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Zach, I don't know. I don't know who hurt you, but I
I
hope
think
they got what they deserved.
I think he has his grumpy slippers on. He has like 5 pairs of slippers he runs around the house, so depending on the room he's in, so not a joke.
Gotta love
Uh,
our wrestlers.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, not just because it's the center of what he's trying to teach and because it's going to help them, but because I think also um, there is plausible deniability in that when he comes clean. It's like I've been telling you the whole time,
yep,
and I think that might be why it becomes more earnest as it gets closer to the end,
sure.
because he knows he's going to have to tell them.
Yeah, and he knows, and so he's trying, I think, trying to steal them for this. Hey, I've been telling you, and he doesn't want to do it in a meme way. It's not like, hey, you dopes, I was telling you this the whole time. He wants them to be realized, like, hey, this is the advice I've been giving you, and you've been doing it. You have been doing it. I haven't been doing anything.
Right.
But one of the more interesting bits is, after the whole I cannot unveil, he goes back to New York City and goes to a class reunion, which I thought was really, really interesting.
It was really weird, and he was in. I mean, he still had the beard and the hair at that time, and
But
he's
he had
just
the hair up in like a man bun kind of deal, and
yeah,
yeah,
he's just like hanging out. I mean, obviously, it was edited the way it was edited, but it looked like he was just hanging out, feeling really weird.
Yeah.
Like, what do you say when someone's like, "Oh, what have you been up to?" And it's like, "Oh,
I've been deceiving a bunch of people and
been living a double
no,
life,
yeah. So
pretending I'm pretending I'm my grandma."
yeah. But he goes that, but he doesn't do that. He doesn't go back for 40 days as like Moses. He went away for 40
I feel
days.
like he must have planned that too, because 40 days comes up a lot in a lot of spiritual
Sure.
things.
47 also comes up in a lot of religious things. So yeah. Ah man. Now we get to the fun part.
I gotta tell you, one thing that I found very overwrought. Um, okay, well, so let's start by how he does it, because otherwise, what I'm gonna say doesn't make sense.
Okay. How about it?
Um, so he makes a video of himself as Kumare
Yep.
in the accent, in the clothes, with all the stuff, and he is explaining, "I have more in common with you than you think. I am a U.S. citizen. I am from New Jersey," and he says all the stuff. Um, and I want you to meet the guru inside of me. I've been trying to get you to, know the guru inside of you. I want you to meet the guru inside of me. And the thing I thought was overwrought is this is edited where as this video is, you see the video playing, you see him cutting the hair and shaving. He was really doing that there because someone points out that he missed a spot. So it's just like, come on, man. Like you could have cut your hair and shaved your face before you showed up. Like,
Yeah.
so he walks out. This is the guru inside of me, Vikram Gandhi. And someone in the back row gets up and just walks out.
Yeah. I believe that was Tish.
Yeah, I think so. I was trying to figure out in the moment, but then I got very distracted because the next thing that happens is the blonde girl runs up and gives him a hug, and then people
Yeah.
start clapping.
Yeah. That was after he revealed who he was. And I thought the interesting thing was he said that basically, Kamari is my ideal self.
Yeah,
And, this is me. My name's Vikram, blah, blah, blah. And he just kind of reveals and he just sits there for a second and then they just start clapping, which I thought was kind of because I was not expecting clapping
no, I was expecting more people running out of the room
or
than
some angry shit being said. I was expecting some of that, maybe, but I wasn't sure.
it
So,
really surprised me. But I think again, if you believe what he said as Kamari, then oh, this makes sense actually.
yeah, and a few of the people were like, "This is it." Like a couple of people were like, "I get it now. Like I see what you were like." There were a few people that said that to him on the thing, just like, "Oh yeah, this is your whole thing, and you've been telling us the whole time." And
Right. Oh,
so,
yeah, like and they found the profundity in that, which actually in a way that is genuinely profound. But
mhm,
I liked that when they were giving like the summaries of what everyone did afterward, it was like Greg thought that the message was good, but the method of delivering it maybe
was
not so much or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah. It's like he didn't agree. But wasn't sure if he agreed with the methodology. It was actually they used methodology, which is a
Oh
great
yeah.
word. But yeah,
Um, and the law of attraction lady never speaks to him again.
no, she won't answer him. And what's interesting is her husband does. Her husband still is
Yeah.
in contact with him, which I find kind of fascinating. Um,
It's gotta be weird in that house.
yeah, but that they were weird together in some way. I don't know how to explain it. There was just a weird vibe with them. But and like the one young lady with the strawberry blonde hair is like going to be a yoga instructor, and like a lot of people, kind of made out well. Like Kimberly, the mother, lost 70 pounds and kept it off, and like that was one of her goals. So like good for her. That was one of her
Yeah.
goals. Like there was like I think they said out of the 14 people that were kind of the core members, 10 of them still are in contact with them.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting about that is like the 4 who aren't in contact with him aren't necessarily angry with him. We don't know why,
Yeah.
right? Because they could just be the people who are like, "Well, I did the thing and it's over and I'm on to the next thing." Or they could be pissed, and we just don't know because, the people who
Or
were angry didn't speak. The wife,
or embarrassed.
yeah, the law of attraction lady, when he's talking to the husband, she's just there with a look on her face like she wants to punch him, which I expected more of. Honestly, I'm not saying that she's wrong. I was trying to put myself in that place. And I honestly, I don't know what I'd do. Because, I mean, I wouldn't follow a guru in the first place, but I've taken, classes. I don't know. It's like if you, I can't compare it to any other kind of class because there's a spiritual element, but I feel like trying to put myself in this place of like this person that you put a lot of faith in, this person that you felt genuine love and affection for, this person who changed your life has just come and said, LOL, just kidding. And I cannot imagine being one of the people who clapped.
I would like to think I would have been one of the people like, oh, okay, I get it. I would like to think I'm like that. I'm not sure I would be in that moment. Probably in that
feel like
moment.
I feel like whoever was with me would hear me be like, "Oh, I got to chew on this." I don't know how I feel. And
Yeah.
usually when I say that, just FYI, don't tell my husband. When I say that, I'm pissed. But I want to see if I'll
I I
remember
I
later.
I would hope he would know that by this point, but
I'm sure he does. But it's like I know that I'm fucking pissed. But maybe I shouldn't be. So I'm not going to talk right now. I just need some time.
I'm intrigued. Like, if your partner was like, if you were in this scenario and you were mad and left, and your partner stayed and was like, "Yeah, I'm still in." How do you cope with that?
Don't know because here's the thing. If you feel injured by that emotionally, that's valid because it was a fucked up thing to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Period. And so, having that feeling of like this person harmed me and you're talking to him on the phone. What the fuck? He's your friend. You admire him. He hurt me. Like I could see that being, like I said, probably a lot of tension in that house with the guy from South Africa and the
Yeah,
dog shop
and
lady.
well, not just tension, the idea that he's not even a US citizen, so if something happens with their marriage, like, he couldn't even really stay.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, it's got that's got a whole bunch of different levels to that particular thing, but, I like to think that, from a wholesome perspective, like, I think a lot of people out of that crowd got good stuff out of it.
Yeah.
So
And I think like even the people who were angry, and again, rightfully so. I'm not judging that at all. Even the people who are angry probably got something good out of it, but they have a right to be angry because they didn't sign up for that. They didn't ask to be experimented on. They didn't ask to be part of a social experiment or
yeah.
um, to learn this lesson like that. I think you should be, I know this isn't true, but I think that you should be reasonably sure if you are doing work with somebody that that person is not lying to your face. Like, could you imagine if you went to therapy one day and your therapist is like, okay, I got to complain. I am not I don't have a license. I started out as a joke, got carried away. Uh,
And I've been recording it the whole time.
like you would be like, what? It wouldn't matter how much good that therapeutic relationship did in that moment. You'd be like, I'm calling the health department. I'm like, I'm calling the cops. I'm gonna hit you. Like I just what? And I feel like he took that role for a lot of people. And those are people who maybe wouldn't go to therapy or
Couldn't
think
afford
they need a
therapy.
spiritual element in addition to it. And so I don't know. I'm not a religious person, so it's hard to put myself in that place. But I
Yeah.
have to compare it to like if my therapist just was like, funny
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
I was
I
wanted to be a therapist.
I just wanted to see what it'd be like.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think overall that was a pretty good watch. Like, it was fascinating in a lot of different ways. And nobody really got hurt. I mean, some people might have emotionally been unhappy with that for sure. But Yeah, that's one of the easier ones we've done.
Yeah, when I would say this too, if you have like if we assume that all four of the people who are no longer in contact with him are fucking heated,
Yeah.
they feel wronged, they feel betrayed, and that is why they were not in contact with him. The majority of people felt like it made sense and they got it. And
Hmm.
so,
On the whole, that's a success, right?
right, like if you know you're taking it back to therapy, it's not gonna your therapist does one particular type of therapy, it's not gonna work on everybody. Somebody walk out of that same therapy office and say that was bullshit, and the other person walks out and it's like that changed my life. So it's kind of I
Yeah.
don't know.
I don't know.
I would have been heated. I would have been so mad. I know this about myself. I might have come around, but in that moment, I would not be clapping.
I would like to say that I wouldn't be heated, but I might have been. It depends to the level of the problem is I'm naturally skeptical of that stuff from the
Right.
jump. So it would be hard for me to really jump with both feet in on anything in that sort of realm, to be quite honest. But if I did and it was fake, I would like to think of that I'd probably be mad and then eventually I'd be like, oh, but it actually did some good for me. I'd like to think I would do that. That's the enlightened bit of me. The realistic part of me says I'd be fucking mad. But
So I'm thinking about it now. Um, the type of dishonesty that makes me the most angry is when people say something knowing that you will think something else. And then you go, you lied. And they go, no, I didn't lie. You know, you
I
asked
told you a little kernel of this, and then you took it and ran with it. Like,
right, you asked when I was coming home for dinner and I said 7 and I was home at 7. And it's like, "Ah, but you knew I meant from work, not on the way to the bar," or whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That kind of thing. Or like he was doing of like, "I told you the truth. I told you the truth." It's like, "Yeah, but you knew I wasn't gonna think that's what you meant. You knew what I was gonna think you were saying or what you meant." And
yeah,
you have this plausible deniability that you get to play with that's kind of feels like gaslighting in a way.
yeah,
And
yeah. I can
so,
see that.
I don't know. I feel very weird about it. I don't want to defend him, but I also don't think that he was wholly wrong. The way it worked out influences my opinion on it as it happened. But like putting myself in that situation, I feel like I would feel very gaslit and just like you knew what we thought you meant. You knew what we thought was going on.
Right.
You weren't really telling the truth.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's put a bow on Kumare. That was a good one. I'm glad we both did this because it's nice to have one that isn't filled with a bunch of awful shit. Um,
Speaking of next month,
yeah. Well, we're going to go back into the awful shit, folks, because we're going to be talking about somebody who quite possibly has the most interesting name for anyone we've covered so far.
it sounds yeah,
It
Tony
is.
Alamo. It sounds fake.
I said Alamo. Maybe it is
Alamo?
Alamo.
Oh, it might be Alamo.
If it's Tony Alamo, that's yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll find out when we watch it. I think you're right, though. I think it is Tony Alamo, which is
Well,
even more fake sounding.
yeah. I neither of us have. Well, I haven't heard of this when I was just looking for stuff for us to do. I was like, what the fuck is this? A guy named Tony Alamo? Like, okay, I have to look into this. And I don't know if you'd heard anything about him because I certainly
No,
hadn't.
when we were looking at those articles together, which now I can't even remember all the twists and turns in that one article I read because there were a lot.
It was so all over the place. But
I mean, this is some shit, you guys. Like, this cult has everything. Imagine that I'm Bill Hader right now. It's
yep,
like that level of crazy, and
yeah.
yeah, I don't want to say that I'm excited to cover all of the horrors, but we're all
but
here to
but
tell
we
you.
are, but we
That,
are.
yeah, you can't judge me. You're watching it.
Yeah, if you're watching it, then you're in it with us. So yeah. So Ministry of Evil, I believe it's on Amazon Prime. I'm not positive, but yeah, I'm looking forward to this because it's a one I've not heard of. We get all these ones we've heard of, but this is something I haven't heard of. So I'm super excited to kind of delve into the awfulness that it is. So if that makes me a bad person, then so be it.
I do like that. Also, the name of the documentary sounds like it could be a heavy metal band.
Yeah.
It's Tony Alamo and the Ministry of Evil.
Like a death metal band.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, that's not what they call themselves. That's just a
No, that's what they
little on
named
the
it.
nose.
That would be awesome if they did name themselves the Ministry of Evil, and it'd be like some sort of dumb Harry Potter take.
Honestly, though, Ministry of Evil, like done right, they'd get me because I would go in like, "Oh, this is funny." They're like so self-aware; it's a big joke, and then it's
Yeah,
like, "Oh my god, they really are
they
sacrificing."
really are fucking evil.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, Renee, let's sign off. This is a shorter one for us, but it was an hour and a half documentary, so hour and a half for us. So yeah, thanks for again. Every time I enjoy the hell out of this, and it's just so much fun. So thank you for going on this journey with me.
Oh yeah, super fun.
Yeah, super fun to delve into people's misery. So yes.
But they weren't that miserable in this one.
No, for a change, they were not. Like this is like this is in the same vein of Unarius, where it's like, oh, this is okay. I can handle this. It's not
I
too
feel like it's
heavy.
even better than Unarius though, because those people are
Yeah,
still stuck,
yeah, that's
and
true.
these people are just like out there improving their lives, having friends, jobs.
Yep. So, all right, folks. Well, thanks for joining us for the Cult Bar, and we will see you October 4th to talk about the Ministry of Evil with Tony Alamo.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. All right.
Good
Bye.
night.